Yes, I liked him. I like the question from Dana. She's asking the group where you're all from. So just maybe if you put in the chat which part of the state or out of state, we have some folks from Nebraska and I think a few from, did we have a couple from South Dakota, I think it was. So if you want to say where you're chiming in from, just so she has an idea of how far and wide the audience is, the students. And then I just wanted to thank you all for coming in. This is just a great opportunity to reach out to all parts of the state. And that's been really exciting just to get that opportunity. And Duncan I did get a comment from someone from Alamosa in regard to the testing locations. We'll talk about that a little bit at the end. And so kind of stay tuned on that one. And with no further ado, though, I think I'll let Dana just introduce herself and go ahead and get started. And hopefully we'll have time for Q&A at the end.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Donna. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Kelly, for organizing this for us. See if I can get my slides up. Can everybody see that? All right. Maybe I don't know, somebody say something. I can't see you anymore.
It looks good.
Okay, cool. I want to try to leave the chat up, which hopefully doesn't interfere with my slides, just because I like to have conversations like this to be conversations, right? I don't want to be just talking at you for an hour, because I wouldn't want you just talking at me for an hour. So I'll pepper some questions to you. And if anyone has questions, like pop them in the chat or raise your hand, or feel free to take yourself off of mute as we go. Totally good with that. But yeah, hi, my name is Dana Coelho. I am our Council of Representatives representative to Big ISA on the Rocky Mountain chapter. Right now, I've been a member of the board for several years and just adore this learning community, this professional community, the climbing community that comes along with it. I'm really honored every time I have an opportunity to share back a little bit of my time and experience and knowledge. By day, I work for the Colorado State Forest Service with Donna. We lead our urban and community forestry program for the state. So what we are doing here today is section 4, the last class, yay, in this 4-class series going through the ISA Certified Arborist Study Guide. So you've heard from 3 of my colleagues. We delivered this content together at ProGreen way earlier this year, and then have the opportunity to do it again virtually, and then hopefully again in February early next year, because we want and we need more certified arborists, more climbing arborists, more people doing more work to take care of trees in our cities and towns all throughout Colorado and all throughout the Rocky Mountain region. So I appreciate everybody popping a little information about yourselves and where you're zooming in from tonight in the chat. We're gonna do a little experiment and try to use another tool here real quick, just to get a little more background on who is here this afternoon. What do you already know? What are you thinking about? What are you bringing to the table? So if you go to the link that is showing up on your screen, menti.com, and enter in the code 88990504, you should see this question. So I would love for everybody to head to this link and start answering this question. And theoretically, we should start having some bars pop up there. So how long have you been in the tree care industry? That could be groundy, climber, urban forester, nursery, however you define that. Yay, it's working. At least one person got to click in, just so we have an idea who is out there and how long have you been working in tree care, urban forestry. give you a moment. And if it doesn't work for you for whatever reason, or you prefer to use the chat function, knock yourself out. Just a little background. Cool. Cool. Definitely seeing some new folks, a handful of maybe what would be called mid-career. All right, we've got another pro out there. That's probably Donna. Awesome. Okay, this is really helpful. Okay, next question is just going to be kind of a fun question. What's your favorite tree today? I like to ask that question this way because if you're anything like me, you don't have a single favorite tree. Maybe you have a favorite shade tree and a favorite like all-time tree and like your favorite weirdest tree or your favorite you know, not planted super awesome urban tree. So madrone, bur oak, larch, digging it. I was chatting with Donna and Kelly before we got started. I grew up in Maryland, so not here in Colorado, not here in our dry environment. And I loved me some tulip trees. And I have recently come to find out that we have some really lovely tulip trees in Denver and in Erie and in Boulder. So that is my favorite tree today because I'm pretty psyched that we have that out here. Nice. Yeah, the autumn purple ash color. Our ash trees are pretty. Too bad, right? Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks for that little bit of participation. I appreciate it and hope it, you know, just kind of sets a little conversational tone. We're all in this together. We're all learning. We're all new, and hopefully we all love trees. So content for this afternoon are chapters 9, 12, 13, and 14. I like to think about this section, if you will, as how do we protect and keep the big, awesome shade and other benefit producing champions in our communities. Planting baby trees is nice and fun, but how do we protect the big ones? How do we protect those benefits and that canopy that is in place? All right, so first thing we're going to talk about is tree support systems and lightning protection. I will offer a caveat that this is not something that I have personally done in my professional life. So I have studied for and completed and maintained my own ISA certified arborist credential, but I'm not speaking about this particular thing from any kind of personal experience. It's more what is in the book, what do we all need to know as professionals supporting each other. So I just like to make that really clear. But yeah, so tree support and lightning protection, we're going to go over when and why you might use these systems, what techniques and hardware are involved, what the limitations are, and just what some of the considerations are in implementing tree support and lightning protection systems. So question first, I'll try to do each chapter like this, just kind of a little pretest. Where are you at with your knowledge? Can anyone toss out, either come off of mute or put it in the chat, what is an instance that you might want to cable a tree? Why would we be putting cables in trees? Yep, right. And why would we be using lightning protection? Heritage trees, included bark. Did somebody want to share something off mute? Cool. Yeah, all good answers. Tree support systems, we use those to add strength, right? Add strength to trees that maybe have weak unions, have multiple stems, or weak wooded for whatever biological or environmental reasons. And we install lightning protection to preserve historical and otherwise really valuable trees, or trees that have the potential to really impact a valuable nearby target, be that a home, another structure, or people in a really commonly used area. All right. Second little quiz question. What is the purpose of a lightning protection system? I want to see some letters in the chat. What are we trying to accomplish by installing lightning protection? Okay, we've got a D. Anybody else? For people that participate, I might think about, you know, it's like I have some study guides in my office. Maybe our most active participant will get themselves a free study guide. Nice. All right, cool. So we've got D's and C's coming in for question 1. Now think about question 2. If 2 bracing rods, these are, you know, straight metal things punched through the union of a tree, where do you place those in relation to each other? Or letters popping in. Cool, C for 1, yep. And if you have no idea, because you haven't gotten to this part in the book yet, totally fine. This is just, these are a couple examples of what we'll be talking about in this chapter. So number 1, purpose of a lightning protection system is to conduct the electrical charge away from the tree. And the bracing rods, will go over this. If you end up with 2 in the same branch, they need to be staggered, not too close to each other, not coming out of the same piece of hardware. So cool, pre-test out of the way. So this is review at this point, since we've been chatting about it, but why install tree support systems? To compensate for some known weakness in a tree, to limit the movement of limbs. And we do this because we want it to reduce the risk of failure, because we want to keep that tree in place, and we want to keep people and property safe around that tree. When we as arborists are installing tree support systems, we always follow best management practices and ANSI standards for this particular type of work. There are some different types of tree support systems. The first one I'll go over is static cable systems. Probably one of the more often seen ones here in the US where we work. This is some kind of wire cable, right, installed to 2 or more branches in order to limit the movement or support heavy or particularly overextended branches. The type and the size of the hardware will depend on the type and the size of tree and the loads that it will be exposed to, as much as the presence of decay, which will obviously affect the strength of that branch and or that trunk. When we're installing them, I think this picture shows it really well. You have a weak union that you're wanting to protect or preserve, and you have the top of the crown. Installation of a cable system goes up about 2/3 into that crown. So it's not too high, it's not too low. That's our best management practice. 2/3 of the way from the weak union to the top of the crown. Static cable systems tend to be composed of the 7-strand common grade cable or a stronger, less flexy cable. Anchor hardware either goes completely through a branch or is screwed into the branch. There'll be eyes or there'll be hooks, and this is really important, they get installed in the direction of the cable, not perpendicular to the branch. And this is an even better depiction of that. So wherever your cable is headed to make its connection, these should all be straight lines, should never look like this. And like that little pretest question, we're never going to have two pieces of hardware too close together or two cables attached to the same bolt. Additional support can be added to a cabling system using a brace. And this would be, say you have your weak union, like our friend in this drawing here, you would have a cable several feet up from that, but you can also install a brace much closer to the union. It's important to note that bracing is only going to be used in addition to cabling. It is not a suitable substitute for cabling. Another support system more commonly used in Europe than in the States, but still totally legit in the States, is a dynamic support system where that cable would be flexible, whereas that steel cable is not really flexible. It's really going to hold those limbs in place. A dynamic support system is going to flex and support the tree, but also support its continued development of reaction wood over time as it moves in the elements. So those were in tree systems, right? Like one tree part to another tree part. These two examples are tree to ground support systems. Guying using a cable or a rope or some other kind of tether can attach a tree to another tree or a tree to the ground to add support, like maybe to correct a lean or keep something from falling in the direction of something you really don't want it to fall on. One really important thing to notice with this type of support system is that it is permanent and can lead to, reduced strength in the tree over time. Propping is when you use a rigid structure. Basically, it's a crutch holding up some big tree part that you don't want to be falling down and landing on someone or something. This other tree protection system is lightning protection. These systems are installed to reduce the risk of damage to trees and property from a lightning strike. It does not stop lightning from, striking in that place. It's not going to reduce the conduction of that lightning. It's going to move it away from the tree. Good candidates for this type of protection are tall trees closest to houses or other buildings, historic and economically significant trees, and trees prone to being struck by lightning in, like we talked about before, really busy areas. And all of these things, the people, the cars in this image, these structures, from a risk management perspective, what do you call those things? Something that could be hit by a falling tree. What is the term for that? Does anybody know what those are called? Yay! Targets. Yeah, so we'll go into that in a little more detail, but yeah, those are targets. The components of a lightning protection system are from top to bottom. The air terminal, this is the item that intercepts the lightning strike. It gets installed as high as possible in the tree. That is connected to a conductor, copper cable that winds down the tree. As depicted in this image, your conductor is just snaking down the tree, maybe going out to another air terminal here. It goes down, at least 10 feet away from the tree and no closer than 2 feet to any structure that is being protected with the system, and ends at the ground terminal. And as arborists, what is our responsibility if we're installing lightning protection or tree protection? I think it's important for the arborist and whoever it is that you are working for to understand that these are long-term fixes, right? It's not you put this in one time and it's good for the rest of the life of the tree. It's really important to build in regular inspection and maintenance of these systems to make sure that they remain structurally intact, that all the hardware is still tight and in good shape, that as the tree grows, it isn't growing over these things. I get to kind of go play arborist at my partner's folks' house out in Chicago when we go home, and they have some old, very overgrown cable systems in their trees, and it makes me sad because at this point there's really nothing I can do to help that, but can help them, you know, not make those same errors in the future. And I'll mention this a bunch this afternoon. Risk mitigation is risk reduction, not risk elimination. So just because you have a cabling system set up, just because you have a lightning protection set up, doesn't mean there is no risk. That's something that's really important to remember with risk management. So talking more about risk assessment and risk management in general, that is the topic of chapter 12, and we'll talk a little bit about what it is, why we do it, what the components of risk are, what kind of recommendations we might make to mitigate risk, and again, what our responsibilities are as professional arborists when conducting risk assessments and providing management recommendations. So here's your turn to share some information again. If there were an equation for risk assessment, what is risk equal? We already talked about targets, so a hint is that it has something to do with the target, but there are two other components that come together to create risk. And then, yeah, if you have ideas on any of these questions in the chat, or come off mute, or if you have a question, feel free to ask that. But if you're using the chat, yeah, just type in the number and give me a few words. Dose and time, okay. I bet everybody still knows number 2. Who wants to say it again? Yes. Cool. So the 3 components of a risk assessment are potential for failure, environmental factors, and targets. There is no target, there is no risk by definition. We'll talk a little more about types of decay fungi that we find in trees, and some of the other risk factors we might find. So this is that risk equation. Tree risk assessment is the process of evaluating the likelihood that part or all of a tree will fail and cause damage or injury to a target. The failure potential of a tree or tree part is influenced by that tree's species, its particular growth habit, defects, branch attachments, etc., etc., etc. So if you remember back to the first lesson with Ben and talking about tree identification, because growth characteristics and strength characteristics and what pests may or may not be present in a tree can be highly species and genus specific. It's always important to know what type of tree you're working with. How do we conduct tree risk assessments? We conduct them in collaboration with the tree or property owner, the tree manager or property manager. It is that owner's responsibility to determine what level of risk they are comfortable with. That is not our job. Our job is to advise them on what risk is being posed to their property or individuals who may be using their property. And we begin that assessment. Sometimes this is as far as we go, but we begin a tree risk assessment with a basic visual assessment. We use a systematic process and diligently document our observations and recommendations. But at this point, we're not using any tools other than our eyes, our brains, and whatever we're taking notes with. If further assessment investigation is warranted, we bring out the tools. Some of them can be very simple, of a probe, a stick, a mallet, those types of things that you might use to sound for decay within a trunk or a branch. You may do digging of some sort or use an air excavation device if you suspect root decay, so that you can see what you can't see without getting into the ground, into that root area a little bit. You may use binoculars to inspect the crown in further detail, but all of these tools would be part of a second step assessment. As we're inspecting, we want to consider both the site, these environmental factors, and the tree itself. Highly recommended, and I learned this from dear friend and colleague, Vince Urbina, who took me through the tree risk assessment qualification course. Whatever your method is to inspect the site and the tree, always do it the same way each time. So as you approach a tree, decide if you're starting by looking up into the crown and going down, or maybe you like starting with the roots and going up, but just do it the same each time. Look at the trunk flare, look at the lean, look at cracks, look for weak unions and other signs of decay, but be systematic and be regular in how you do it so you don't miss anything. Ditto for the site. Have a consistent practice to observe and ask questions about recent changes to the site, nearby or recent construction, weather and storms that may have happened recently that may be predicted for the near future, or just that are really common in that area. And look around the immediate site in the neighborhood for nearby tree failures, and if they can teach you anything about what might be going on with the tree or trees that you are looking at in your current risk assessment. Yes, so tree decay, right? All living things go through this process of birth, growth, and decline, and death, and fungus is among us, and it gets into trees and tree parts and causes decay. There are three primary types of decay: fungi, or rot as they're known, white rot, and brown rot and soft rot. They behave differently, and they will cause different types of, strength losses in the tree. So it's important to know what you're looking at. The biggest difference that I would say, white rot, those fungi decay lignin before cellulose. It's just how they function. That's what they like to eat. And that reduces the stiffness and compressive strength of wood, versus brown rot, which decays cellulose first, which reduces the bending strength of wood. And soft rot is kind of in the middle of the two, but tends to behave in trees a little more like brown rot than white rot. Some indicators of decay. And what we mean by positive indicators is that if you see these things, if you see fruiting bodies, visible open cavities, and visible decayed wood, there is decay. Period. End of story. You can go farther and figure out what type of decay that is, what fungus is present. But if you see those things, you have decay in that tree part. Potential indicators of decay include cracks and seams, bulges, and wounds. So these visible indicators may lead us to believe that there is decay, but it's not 100% positive indicator of decay. So we're doing this assessment, we're looking at the tree, we're looking at the site, we're thinking about what might go wrong, what hazards and what targets are present, and how likely is some tree failure to happen. Once we know all of that, we have to figure out what to do about it. And that is risk management, balancing risk levels against other factors such as available time and money. Based on, your recommendations that, again, that owner's level of comfort with having risk present and that owner manager's budget, you may recommend different mitigation options, including removing dead, broken, or high-risk branches, installing the tree support systems that we've spoken about already, or removing targets. Because if there is no target, if there is nothing of value or no one for that tree or tree part to hit, you have mitigated the risk. So if you're in some kind of park environment, maybe there's a bench or a picnic table, under a high-risk branch, you could choose to move that target. If you have a high-risk tree and people around it that we really don't want you around this tree in case something happens, put a fence around it and or put signs nearby that warn people of that risk so they can keep themselves out of the area, so that targets are not present, so that risk is reduced. And as a last resort, you can remove the tree. If the chances of failure and the severity of that failure are high enough, sometimes you need to just take it out. But we like, as a profession, to be conservative in recommending taking out trees because of all the benefits that they do provide while they're standing and growing and living. All right, responsibilities again. What are our responsibilities as an arborist? Two really important terms here: duty of care and standard of care. It is your responsibility to do your job, right? To know what it is you're doing and to exercise due diligence in the inspection of and the care of trees. Be thorough, be systematic, be reasonable. Standard of care is a technical term, really a legal term that defines, if you will, the degree of care that a reasonably prudent person, someone who should know what they're doing, would exercise in the same or similar circumstances. And if someone finds that an arborist conduct falls below these standards of care, that you're not following best practices, that you're not aware of and following ANSI standards, then you can become legally liable for the assessment that you're giving. So that's why you take lots of notes, you be really diligent, and you be really conservative in your recommendations. And I'll have a few of these. Hey, do you want more? Do you want to study more? Is this piece of the arborist and urban forestry puzzle that you might want to dive into. The tree risk assessment qualification is available also from ISA to those who already possess a certified arborist qualification, a board certified master arborist, an accredited degree. So this isn't step 1, but it may be step 2 or step 3 for somebody. I found it to be a really valuable course to go through, and that is something that is available to professionals that meet the eligibility requirements. Woo! I'm going to take a breath and see if anybody out there has any questions as we've gone along, because we're still talking about protecting trees, right? It's just in general, why are we doing that? How do we do that? And the next topic is doing so during and in the planning phases leading up to a construction project. Does anybody have any questions on what we've covered so far?
I have a question, Dana.
Yeah.
This is Madeline. Do you have any additional like recommendations for like reading about decay and like types of rot and things like that, especially in like the Rocky Mountain region?
Ooh, that's a good question. Not off the top of my head, but that is something I will look into, because I'm certain someone has written a really awesome book about it.
Okay.
I don't know if you have any specific book recommendations on decay fungi.
There are some out there, pathology type booklets. I'm just gonna Google it right now. And then I'll
Okay,
see if we can
cool.
put something in the text.
Yeah, that would be helpful. That's a
Yeah.
great question. Any other questions? All right, moving along. So construction, it happens, right? And I think this is especially an important topic for those working in urban areas, right? A lot of us live in places that continue to grow or getting redeveloped and have existing tree canopy, or we want to be adding tree canopy to new developments. So how do we go about protecting trees during construction? What does the process look like? And again, what are some of those responsibilities of a professional arborist during the construction planning and implementation phases? So, true or false? The objective of an arborist involved in a development project is to save every tree on the site. What do you think? Yeah, I mean, if the developer, if the owner says that our goal in this project is to save every tree on site, then that would be your objective. But 99 times out of 100, that is not going to be the objective. So that is important to note. Number 2, true or false? There is far more than an arborist can do to treat trees that have been damaged during construction than to prevent that damage. Also false, A+, y'all. And 3, when soil is compacted by construction equipment, trees usually decline because, man, y'all bright tonight. Absolutely. Yep. So as good old Ben Franklin said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. There is so much more we can do to avoid damage to trees, roots, soil than we can to fix damage that is done. Yes, good job. So what kind of damages are we talking about during the construction process? Damage can happen both above ground and below ground. So branches can be broken, split, knocked off, trunks can be wounded, and trees can receive additional exposure to sun, wind, ice, and other environmental factors. Say, a building comes down or a new building gets put up, that really can drastically change the environment for that tree. Below ground, soil compaction is a really common occurrence during construction, cutting and damaging roots, and roots getting smothered by grading and the addition of too much more soil above that root zone. So these are all the things we're trying to avoid by being engaged in all of these processes, all of these phases of the construction process. Our goal, right, what we want in a construction project, in a development project, is for there to be an arborist or arborist involved early in the planning process, not just at step number 6 when we're thinking about the new trees and the other landscaping to come in. We want to be able to be involved in planning phases, in site clearing and demolition, in all phases of grading, in the installation of utilities, especially when we're talking about wanting to protect root systems, and then certainly the construction and final grading itself. Damage and significant damage can occur during any of these phases, not just at the beginning, not just at the end. So we talked about our job as arborists not necessarily being protection of every single tree on site. Instead, our job is to determine which trees are suitable for preservation, which we really want to and think we can save because of their value, economically or historically, how healthy they are, how tolerant or not they might be to construction, and looking at the same set of reasons, which trees will need to be removed because they're simply not going to survive the damage that is bound to happen, or the perturbation that is bound to happen, or they're right in the way of a building or a road or a sidewalk or something that is going to get built in this project. So determine suitability for preservation and then inventory those trees. So just like there will be maps, drawings, engineering documents for whatever structures are present or will be added during a construction project, we need those same types of documents of the trees that are on site, the trees that will be protected, other environmental features, that all needs to be documented. And then we use all of this to develop specifications for tree protection that go into the construction documents. So things that are on that map are part of that inventory. We create tree protection zones around any tree or group of trees that is to be protected during construction. To enforce a tree protection zone, there's typically going to be some kind of physical barrier, signs, fencing of some sort that will keep people and keep machinery and keep equipment out of that tree protection zone, which should be big enough to actually protect the tree and its active root zone. So it's not good enough to just wrap some wood around the trunk of a tree if you're going to be driving big equipment all over the roots and killing it that way. So tree protection zone, arborists can be involved in designing access routes through a construction site such that there is one or as few as possible travel routes within the project site to reduce the likelihood of soil compaction, root damage, people running into trees. And then maintaining good communication with the planners, the crews on site, whoever is going to be out there, monitoring what's going on. Collaboration and communication should always be at the top of our list, no matter whether we're working with tree protection zones during construction, setting up tree protection systems of some other sort. Communication and collaboration are always going to be key skills and components of a successful project. If and when damage does occur, what can we do about it, right? Because we're all human. Everybody that we work with is human, and we'll make mistakes and we'll run over stuff and things will get broken. We do, in most circumstances, have ways to treat damage. Sometimes it'll be bad enough that there's not much you can do about it, but some damage can be mitigated by pruning, cabling and bracing, bark tracing or removing loose and jagged bark. So think about that in the same way as you would with, say, storm damage, right? You have this big, messy rip on a branch. Clean it up, give it a nice pruning cut that is exposing a smaller wound to the elements and the bugs and crud that can get inside of that tree. So those are kind of the above ground mitigation techniques. And then thinking about the soil and the roots, there are changes that we can make to irrigation and drainage on the site to try to preserve that root zone. We could consider aeration, consider additional mulch being placed around that tree. These are some of the treatment options to mitigate damage after construction. And I think we have talked about that pretty good. Primary role and responsibility of the arborist during construction is to define and enforce the tree protection zone. All right, last section. This is good. All right, I think we're pretty much on track to have me talking for an hour, and hopefully I still want questions. Maybe you don't have any, maybe that won't happen, but you are encouraged to ask as we go or at the end if that feels comfy. But chapter 14, last section of our last class, and my favorite aspect of this work and what I do most of the time is not be an arborist, but most of the time I am an urban forester and working with urban foresters. And we are the folks that care for lots of trees at a time, as opposed to focusing on one tree at a time. So I totally just gave away the first one, but if our arboriculture focuses on the blank, urban forestry focuses on the blank. I want to hear some voices or see some chat. Yeah, good job, Mason. And technical term, and one of the benefits that we talk about with trees and forests. What is the term when trees take up carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and store it in the form of wood and other carbon-based tissues? A+ to Maddie and Mason for carbon sequestration. This is really important when we're talking about urban forestry, tree planting, and tree protection as climate mitigation or climate resilience strategies. Kind of important. Cool. Next little quiz question. Which of the following is an example of a social benefit of trees? Cool. We got A, D. Hopefully folks have seen some of this research. I'm now realizing that there were some more links I should have put in this section, but absolutely 100%. The answer to number 1 is D, all of the above. Trees provide many benefits. Some of those are really easy to measure and quantify. Others are much harder to measure and quantify, but our knowledge of these benefits and the amount of academic literature and more accessible writing that is documenting these benefits, it just keeps on growing. So we like trees in cities and towns for these reasons and more. And one of the main tools we have as urban foresters is ordinances, tree protection ordinances. So what does a tree ordinance do for a city or town? All right, see some new participants there and more D's. Yay! All of the above, right? Each community's ordinance will look different, for lots of different reasons, but at its core, it's describing what the tree resource is, describing rules, related to tree planting, tree removal, and establishing some kind of authority for monitoring and maintenance and enforcement. So good job. The benefits of urban trees, super well documented. We have environmental benefits, that carbon sequestration, cleaning air and water, reducing stormwater runoff and soil erosion, physically cooling spaces, which is becoming more and more important in some of our urban centers that struggle with urban heat islands. Tree shade and strategically located tree shade can save people's lives. So cooling the air, providing shade really is an environmental and a human benefit of trees. Their aesthetic values, screening, being beautiful, right? Who doesn't want to live in a beautiful tree-filled community? Their economic benefits of trees and psychological and social benefits of trees that can accrue to individuals in terms of our own physical and mental health, that can accrue to students. There's research that students perform better in schools that have trees on property, that have views of trees from windows, that people in hospitals recovering who have views of trees from their hospital room recover faster. There is evidence that communities that have trees and well-maintained trees see reduced crime. Trees are important. We want to live with trees in our community. Trees are also an essential part of the infrastructure of a community. They are green infrastructure and something that can and should be invested in alongside our roads, our telecommunications, our other, infrastructure systems. We really rely on and depend on strategically planned and planted and maintained green spaces and treed spaces. Some other important topics or terms, if you will, in urban forestry are sustainability, a community or an individual or a system's ability to maintain itself over time, and resilience, which is a community's ability to bounce back after disturbance or change. Both sustainability and resilience are fostered by diversity within individuals making decisions and managing a system, but also in the diversity in terms of age, species. The diversity of our urban forest contributes to its sustainability and its resilience. We have a number of tools that we can use as urban foresters to manage trees in cities and towns. One of the most important is a tree inventory. And this tool, usually GIS based, these days, this is one example of one tool. Tree Plotter, there's Tree Keeper, lots of folks have their own internal ArcGIS based systems, but an inventory records the location, characteristics, and assessment of trees within an area, a particular park, all of the parks in a city, all of the street trees in a city, whatever that management unit is. The types of data that tend to be in these inventories are, the tree information, the demographics. There may be information about canopy size and cover, economic and environmental benefits produced by the trees, planting opportunities. So you can have dots and points, data points for existing trees and places where new trees could be planted. And these inventories can be just a snapshot in time, kind of showing what the status of a resource is, or in communities that have more capacity, that have some staff, whether contracted or part of the community, to manage the urban forest. This inventory is a critical component of that management and the issuing of work orders and documenting what was done, when, by whom, so that we know what those touch points are and how we're caring for this resource over time. Not necessarily something that was included in the book, maybe in newer versions, but tree canopy assessments, I would say, are really emerging and more cheaper, more easily accessible tools are becoming available to us as urban foresters to look at that resource, not just from a stem by stem management perspective, but from this bigger scale, right? What is it that's creating most of the benefits in a tree? It's the canopy. And counting stems, counting trunks is great, but what is that canopy? What is the cover of leaves providing shade, providing these other benefits? And how is that canopy distributed over a community? I think tree canopy assessments are really critical, really rapidly developing urban forestry tool. We've also talked a little bit about tree ordinances, also super important tool in the urban foresters toolbox, less about data and more about rules and regulations. So this is a document that would be passed by a city or town council, maybe a county, maybe an HOA, that defines the authority and scope of that entity and what their responsibilities are for protecting and caring for trees. May include processes and recommendations or requirements for planting, pruning, requiring removal permits, hiring only certified arborists or licensed arborists that are on a list that the city maintains. These look a lot of different ways in a lot of different communities, but are another essential tool in the urban foresters toolbox. And then management plan. So if you have tree inventory data, if you have tree canopy data, what do you do with that? How do you apply that knowledge and those data to caring for your urban forestry resource over time? You use those data, you use objectives from the citizens, from other staff, elected officials engaged in community business to develop a plan, a set of strategies and procedures for managing the trees within a defined area. Identifying goals and objectives, guidelines, engaging stakeholders, talking about when and where and why you want to plant trees, what goals you might have for tree canopy or tree canopy equity across a community, how you intend to respond to natural disasters or insect and disease infestation. These are all topics, themes, elements that could make their way into an urban forest management plan. And wanted to share this particular resource because in Colorado, at least along the Front Range, a major management issue we've been dealing with for the last several years since emerald ash borer was discovered in Boulder in 2013 is what the heck do we do with all our beautiful ash trees that are at risk of being eaten and killed by the emerald ash borer? And I bring this up in this section because urban forest management plans can be big and comprehensive, or they can be specific and targeted to a particular issue of concern, like this insect pest. And we have a number of management resources for treatment options, a management plan builder tool that folks can plug some basic information into to get like a first draft of what would a EAB management plan look like for our community. You don't have to pay someone thousands of dollars to get that started for you. We have those available from the state and from the contractors that we worked with on this project. And then my last slides are some, hey, are you interested in learning more, in doing more? If you're a few years, if you're several years into your urban forestry or your tree care career and you're interested in leading, in working with others and developing some of your collaboration and communication skills, access to professional networks, the Municipal Forestry Institute run by the Society of Municipal Arborists, really amazing leadership development opportunity. Likewise, the newer Green Communities Leadership Institute is available for arborists, urban foresters, and a host of other green industry folks working as planners or maybe in public health. This leadership development course is meant to attract a diversity of professions that are all engaged in urban sustainability, including urban forestry. And then if you're like, whoa, slow down, not ready for that nonsense, but I do want to take the certified arborist exam. I really want that credential. I'm kind of nervous. I need to study. I don't really know where to start. There is a really tremendous study group online on Facebook. If that's a social platform that you currently use or would consider using, really active. Folks are like testing each other and asking each other questions and sharing successes when they, take the exam and pass it. It's been a really valuable resource to a lot of folks in and beyond Colorado, really led by some leaders in our industry here in Colorado. So definitely recommend that resource to folks. And then if you're interested in taking another refresher class, we typically host an in-person course. It'll look a lot like this one, but instead of being 4 days long, it'll be one like really dense afternoon, kind of a cram session before sitting for the certified arborist exam on February 2nd at ProGreen. And if you're not down for that in-person exam, you would prefer to take a computer-based one, you would prefer to find something that's closer to you if you live out in Alamosa or somewhere else, and coming to ProGreen in Denver is not in your schedule or your budget, there are a number of computer-based testing centers throughout the state, and those you can schedule your certified arborist exam at a time that is convenient to you, as opposed to a particular testing date and testing with a big group of people. So just so folks know, we have at least one upcoming exam in the somewhat near future, and you pretty much always have access to those computer testing sites. So with that, it's just past 5, and that's what I got. So I might, I don't know, turn my slides off, or you can, Donna or Kelly, do we tend to share these slides with folks, or should I like be popping links in the chat, or maybe we can follow up with an email that includes some of the links that were in the chat and were on my slides?
Yeah,
Sure,
I'll share that
sure.
tomorrow morning. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that, Kelly. Go. You're good.
No, I'll attach it to the email that has the recording
Cool.
and some of these links that have been shared here.
Super. Well, yeah, I guess I'll see if anyone has any more questions. I guess it can be this section, or, you know, kind of other questions that you think I might be able to answer because of what you know I do.
And Dana, I can share, I'll just share my screen real quick for the Pearson, just to give an example. Oh,
Okay.
it didn't inactivate it, darn it. Let me see if I can go back. Okay, well, this might give you an idea though, but look at the, if you go to ISA, actually what I did was, you can either go to events where you probably did go to, but I just searched certified arborist exams. And then you sort of get some information. Let's see if I can.
Internal search engines never are quite as good as just the old Google.
Well, maybe I'll get off and then come back again. So
Okay.
that I had it and then I lost it because I wasn't.
Right, staying active, right? But you should be able to search for Pearson VUE sites in Colorado and find the closest one. Typically they're at like a community college or a library or something. And then also on the ISA website and on our chapter website, when there are certified arborist exams scheduled that will be in person and proctored, those dates will be available on our and the big ISA website.
And the Pearson one, I just happened to look up Alamosa. There was some for there was a college in Alamosa, and then there was like Pueblo Community College, and then it went up to Colorado Springs for some private Pearson studying areas. And it cost, I think it was an extra, you know, you pay for the test, but be aware that taking the online exam is another expense, but at least you don't have to stay at a hotel. And, you know, sometimes if it's pretty far out of town, unless you can. So to me, that was kind of useful. And then you do find out what your score is right after.
Yeah, immediately. So that's handy.
Yeah. So the Pearson may be of interest for those that are out farther along. And I actually had that request from Montrose too at one time, and that time that you could go to Grand Junction, or then they sent you to Moab, Utah too. So.
Oh wow, yeah.
But those are actually
it doesn't matter where you take it, because the certified arborist exam is the certified arborist exam.
Yeah, and the other part about it that's kind of good is if it is local and you do know your local college, I was able to call and find out if it was convenient, because sometimes, you know, they're testing for something else and the room could be full. So you can kind of call and say, hey, you know, what's a better opening for you? And then you can look at your calendar and figure out when that works for you too. So you can prepare and show up and be there and, you know, ready to test.
Yeah.
And COVID was another thing that kind of popped in there for a while. It was good to call and find out if they were available.
Yeah, cool.
So anyway, so good luck, everyone.
Yeah, those resources should be easy enough for you to find. And I see a question from Mo, are there any good resources to study Latin names? That is an excellent question. I'll share what something that I've been doing recently, which is kind of a combination of being in a community that you know has an inventory, right? So you can walk around in a population of trees with a map. So Denver has their park trees and their right-of-way trees included in a tree keeper inventory. So you can be walking down a street and say, I think that is a bur oak. That is a Quercus macrocarpa. And you can look it up on the inventory and see if you are correct. I've been using iNaturalist. I use another app called Picture This, which is not a free app, but it's been giving me really good results. And I just find that kind of studying that and being in a place and looking at a tree and kind of remembering, working on those identification skills. And then every time I see it, it's like, okay, what is the common name I know this thing by? And then what is its scientific name? It really just takes practice and a few walks, good app or two, and a good book or two. So when we send the tree fungus, decay fungus reading recommendation, can put a couple good tree books in there. But yeah, just practice and go take a walk with an inventory. Cool. Any resources for online practice tests? I'm trying to remember when I studied for the ISA certified arborist exam, and in case anyone can't see the chat, the question was, are there any resources you would recommend for online practice tests? I listened to the audio. There was this set of CDs, so I'd be driving around and would listen to the audio version of the chapters. There are some interactive CDs, which honestly are probably just online based now instead of being CDs, and those had some practice tests in there. And then the book itself has practice questions. Cool. And Rob popped in a good recommendation. Hudson Gardens in Denver has a variety of trees that are labeled with common and Latin names as well. So that's a really good suggestion. Go to those gardens. The Denver Botanic Gardens is going to have labels. There's a handful of other arboreta, like University of Denver has some of its campus trees labeled as an arboretum. Colorado State University has some of its trees labeled as an arboretum. So go somewhere where you know there's a collection of trees being managed and as an educational resource. Maddie, I see your hand up.
Thanks. I kind of have two slightly more general questions. I was wondering, like, when you kind of knew you were ready to take the test, if there was like a moment, or if you just kind of knew that you'd done enough studying, and then also, like, if you have any questions about like your qualifications to take the test, where would you direct those towards?
Both really excellent questions, because there are pretty there's a pretty high bar for what professionals are eligible to sit for the certified arborist exam. So if you're at all uncertain, I would definitely recommend reaching out straight to ISA. Like, be on that, I want to become a certified arborist page on the website. Reach out via email. If you don't hear from somebody, call somebody, but they've been pretty good of late with their customer service on that. So have your documentation together and kind of make a pitch for, here's how I think I'm meeting the education and or work eligibility requirements. I just want to confirm that, you give me a thumbs up to apply to take the test. So that's not something one of us can do for you. It's big ISA that answers that question. And then, how did I know I was ready to take the test? I studied with some friends several years ago, other colleagues when I was working for the US Forest Service and the Urban and Community Forestry Program. And we all had kind of come into this field from different fields and different perspectives. Like my background is in ecology and urban planning, not specifically forestry, but I had worked in urban forestry for long enough that I was allowed to take the exam. Honestly, we're kind of type A overperforming nerds. So we formed a little study group and studied together. And we're like, I think we're going to be able to take this test. Other folks who maybe are a little less, maybe you're not a great test taker or you're a really experiential learner or something. The ISA certified arborist exams and really any of these qualification processes can be really hard and can be really daunting. If you ever feel like you need an accommodation for a learning style or a learning disability, absolutely reach out to ISA, and they are able to work with people on accommodations for taking the exam. So don't have any qualms or shame about asking for something like that. But yeah, find some folks to study with, get some experience on the ground, tell people that you're working with that you're studying for the exam and that you want to take it. And all I've ever seen in the arborist community is tons of support and encouragement. So just be open with people that you're studying and they'll just like throw knowledge at you.
I personally liked having different approaches. And at the time they were CDs.
Yeah.
So I could listen to CDs like people listen to, pods nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And so while you're driving along, I'd read it and I'd listen to it. And then cards, writing it down, definition on the other side, try to memorize just, in those times when you can perhaps do the card thing while your husband or your partner or your friend is driving you somewhere, you can be the nerd with your cards and just see if they know or they can, just saying them out loud helps.
Yep. Have fun with it and practice.
As far as knowing when you're going to be ready, personally, I'm kind of the kind of person that when the test is on the calendar, then I'm getting ready all the way up to the last second. So, but then you're kind of as ready as you can be, really.
Mm-hmm.
So make a deadline.
Yeah, right. Any other questions or comments out there in Zoom land? Does anybody have an exam on their calendar yet? Yeah, I believe so. Mo just typed a question into the chat. You do get one free retake if you don't pass the first time, right? I believe that is the case and that the retake has to be within 1 calendar year of the first attempt. But we can look that up and confirm that and put that in the follow-up email, but I'm pretty sure those are the rules. If Donna or Kelly knows otherwise, feel free to correct me. Cool. And Tammy says they're taking the exam soon. Good luck to you, friend. Well, I don't have anything else. If folks don't have additional questions, is there anything else that you want to share, Donna or Kelly?
Just the question about the scientific names. If you go to the coloradotrees.org website and then find the right tree, it does have Front Range recommended tree list, and that does share the common name and the scientific name. And it does get into the varieties and you know, the cultivar types too, so you can at least familiarize yourself a little bit with that.
Thanks, that's a great resource.
I don't think I have anything else to add other than thank you, Dana. Thank you for your time. I can't believe 4 weeks has gone by already. I feel like we just first ago.
Right?
But I think this has been awesome. So thanks everybody else who has participated. I hope that you guys found value and you feel so much more prepared than you did before.
Yeah, and definitely feel free to reach out to any of us, really anytime. We try to be super available, and especially to my State Forest Service colleagues out there, Tanya and Jody, I see you, good job. super psyched when we have our folks headed in this direction of becoming certified arborists. So kudos to you, and thanks for doing this.
And then last, I'm going to give a round of applause to Donna, because without her efforts, this would not be happening. So thank you, Donna.
Thank you, Donna.
I think this takes a village. It's a village.
Indeed.
But I just thank all you students for your effort to actually purchase the books and then, you know, try to get through them a little bit, and
Mhm.
you can at least look forward to a learning future. Just keep learning. You'll have fun. So thank you.
All right, with that, well, I'm going to close it out then, you guys. Everybody have an excellent night. Enjoy the rest of your free time.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.